I think it's a good thing in general in life to be aware of. Because you're like, who, me? And, oh, they're not going to like this. And I'm like, no, fuck all that. You know, you always have more power than you think. I'll just leave it at that. You know what? One great thing that distinguishes this festival from many others is the quality of its retrospectives. Last year, for example, was a wonderful retrospective, if you remember, on Columbia cinema in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. This year, it's post-war British cinema, 1945 to 1960. And I think if someone had come here from the beginning of the festival and stayed to the end and watched those 40 films and digested the book, it's like a complete university course in post-war British cinema in 10 days. It's a real gift. And so I only came at the end, and I'm only seeing about 8 of those 40 films, but at least I have the titles, and I'm going to catch up with them. Look, like you, like so many people, I love movies, and when you have that hunger, you just want to keep learning more and more and more and find those jewels, you know, that maybe you've never even heard of. And this retrospective is permitting that. Well, I don't know. I don't want to tell other people what they should do, but I know that I learn a lot, and I just derive joy from cinema and from watching movies. I feel so lucky that I was born even during a period in history where the cinema even exists. We're so lucky. Think of all those people who lived and died and never had movies, billions of them. 2 most important components, I feel, of narrative cinema, which are the screenplay and the casting. Because no matter how fancy and brilliant, embroidered the filmmaking style of a film may be, really the audience, including you and me, really we're just watching the story and the actors. And those are the 2 things too that any director will tell you. If your screenplay isn't quite right or if the casting isn't quite right, those are the 2 things that give you trouble in the editing room, you know, when you're trying to finish the film. You know, look, between 1969 and 1976, 77, the core of his early work, he created a body of roles in films, which you could almost say is as cohesive as the work of any single director. I mean, what he brought, the presence that he brought to those roles, and also the quality of the films he was offered. You know, like you asked a moment ago, oh, maybe we don't have so many great actors. Well, maybe we do, but the movies aren't as good. And they're not being given the same opportunities to shine. But I can tell you that, but anecdotally, working with him was like driving, not that I've ever driven one, but what I imagine driving like a really, really fine Ferrari would be. Like you just move the wheel a little bit this way or a little bit that way. I mean, any direction I would give him, he would do precisely. And he made me a better director because I'd watch him act and I realized that I had told him the wrong thing. So I would have to say, Mr. Nicholson, I'm so sorry. I said this, but now I see I meant this. And then he would do that. I don't know if the characters of the movies I've made so far are outcasts per se, but I just want them to be real people, recognizable to me. Look, man, what just won Best Picture this year? Nora, a movie made really independently. I mean, without studio financing. I mean, your word independent can mean a few different things. It can mean the source of the financing. It can mean the authorial spirit in which a film is made, et cetera, et cetera. But there's always opportunity. I've never been pessimistic about the ability of true filmmakers to get their films made. We just have to keep our budgets low. That's the key. Sure. No matter the source of the financing, you have to keep your budgets low. Unless you're Martin Scorsese and get $200 million or Chris Nolan and get $200 million. I guess they're also independent, but working at a different level. I think it's a good thing in general in life to be aware of. Because you're like, who, me? And, oh, they're not going to like this. And I'm like, no, fuck all that. You know, you always have more power than you think. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, for me personally, I find it the superior form. That humor, irony, comedy, whatever you want to call it, gives us distance but a delightful distance with which to view human experience. You know, it's the same thing with music. What am I supposed to keep up with all the new music? No, you wait for some time to go by, some years, and you see what history still regards as interesting and good, then you listen. You only have so much time on Earth. I'm about to make a film in Denmark. So in October, I'm moving up to Denmark, and I start shooting in February a Danish film, and in Danish language. You know, I make my little comedies or whatever, but I like samurai films and westerns and cinema of archetype, and it would be nice to do, and I have a pretty good idea for one. I do appreciate the perspective, I guess. I was given, not just as a Nebraskan from a small state, but also as a second-generation immigrant family. 3 of my 4 grandparents immigrated from Greece. And so, and both people tend to be funny. Greeks tend to be pretty funny, and Nebraskans tend to be pretty funny, so I appreciate that. And I don't know what to say. You can't help where you were born. But I think when I shoot there, it automatically injects a level of humor into what I'm doing. Saul Bellow, the American writer, upon winning the Nobel Prize, said, "The child in me is delighted. The adult in me is skeptical." And I think that's how you feel. So no, it's great. And they have to give the award to someone. I'm glad it's me this year. I'm in lovely company of people who received it years and years ago. Even last year, Jane Campion. So it's very nice. All I can say is it's very nice. And I'm glad it brought me here to watch the retrospective of British cinema.